Greetings, dear ones. I'm Kryon of Magnetic Service. There's discernment here among an eclectic group of whether this actually is happening or not. Spirit honors humanity to the extent that all things given to humans are from humans. Always. All invention from humans, all spiritual information from humans. The various books that are written that are scripture are from humans. That which you call the Word of God is from humans. And so this process that you see now is difficult for some. We've answered the question before, where is Lee? Over a period of years, there is a process that he has learned. He is here. He steps aside. He steps aside so cleanly and clearly that not only is it not him talking, but he allows things to come through. Dear ones, this was not always the case. I told him some time ago, if you do this correctly, it will coincide with the shift. And people will hear the voice and the information. And they'll know it's real. The reality today is that the shift is upon you in a great way. That every single human being is unique on the planet to the extent that it affects you differently. Some sit and say, it's nice to hear these words, but I'm just fine. There really is no thing that I can point to that is different, and then a month from now, if you interview them, they'll be on their knees and say, I didn't expect this or this or this. There'll be others who simply have a different way of thinking, and it's happened simply over time, and they realize there is a difference. Others say, I don't know about a difference with me, but people around me are different. Unique. Each one of you is a product of who you've been. In this group, I talk to old souls, very old souls. The youngest among you may be the oldest soul. And the old soul is that which is someone who has what is called the essence of their spirituality, the soul of the creation, that has always been here, who has been on the earth in different incarnations or expressions over and over and over, so that this information rings true. I want to tell you something about spirit, because we're going to review some things tonight and talk about new things tonight that have to do with reality. It has to do with a changing consciousness, a changing physics, a changing earth, change of ways, paradigms that are vastly different than ever before. And one of them we have discussed before, but we do it again now so that it is more succinct. Spirit is in what we will call normal physics. The creative source has created the methods of the universe, of the galaxy, the rules of physics. You live in a limited physics. And so all of the things that are beyond the box you came from or lived or taught appear odd to you, including the man in the chair. But you have one mechanism, all of you, that is outside of the box, and it's the spiritual connection of your soul. You can call it your higher self, you can call it whatever you want to. from the beginning of humanity, from the beginning of time, when human beings started to study that which was beyond their box, they felt the connection. There are so many words for God. Some of them realized, and the indigenous especially, that God was not over there. God is here. Inside is where the action is, not outside. And the combination between the inside and the outside becomes a confluence, a connection, an entanglement that gives you something you didn't have before. But with free choice, you had to open the door to get it. That's basically spirituality and the way it worked. There's awareness, questioning, and sometimes the door opens. When you realize that it's part of you instead of the outside, it opens. And then some things start happening. You're connected to full physics instead of limited physics. And you start having that in your life, which changes synchronicity, luck, relationships, who you are, your lifespan. I want to talk to you tonight about why youthing works. I want to give you the ABCs of it. You may not like it. It may be too technical. But it's logical. All the things that I teach to you, dear human being, that is spiritual has what we call spiritual logic. God is not slaved to a clock, and you are. You have a past, a door you go through. You have what you call in the moment, as the second hand turns and you move with the second hand, a door you go into. You have the future, which is an unrealized potential, a door you go through. The doors are never together for you. They're always separate because they're in a linear line. The clock ticks and you watch the hands go around in a linear fashion. But the creative source has no time. You might have learned that the best thing is to be in the now. Some of you have said, well, I'm in the moment. That's not the now. The now is a combination of past, present, and future. It's a circle. And because it's a circle, dear ones, in a multidimensional consciousness, a soul connected to the other side, you can sense what's coming because it's just in the circle. As you become more multidimensional, the reality that used to be linear starts to shift. People will look at you and say, how could you do that? How did you accomplish this and that? And maybe the only answer you have is, I connected to Source and got what I needed. And if that's your answer, I would like to tell you, it's the right answer. Do you have to explain the internal combustion engine to start your car? And the answer is no. You start it and you go. And I'm saying to you, in this shift, with these new paradigms, it's time to drop the questioning, the what-ifs, the academia. It's trying so hard to hold you back. That intellect that says, I got to understand it. It's not going to make any sense. I can't move forward unless I understand it. Why not just right now instead? Just make the connection and go. The understanding will come in time. It always does. But in this shift, old souls are going to be asked to step out. Take that intuitive hand of the Creator, old soul, and do things you don't understand. It's courageous because it is not in a survival energy. It's in a new paradigm. A new paradigm that is outside of the survival box. A paradigm that eventually will see all humanity without war. With the idea of killing one another is barbaric as it is. History will show this, and the shift starts now. All of you are involved, regardless if you think so. And depending upon that which we call the energy of your Akash, will depend on what's next for you. I'm talking to shamans here. Every man in this room has given birth. Every woman has slain someone on the battlefield. Can you feel that? It's all there. If I were to ask you, deep inside right now, do you have wisdom beyond your years? Everyone in the room would say yes. You feel it. If you ask somebody who has just arrived on the planet and is sitting here, and there are none, by the way, and this would be their first lifetime, and there is none, by the way, here. If you interviewed that person and says, do you have wisdom beyond your years? They would look up at you and say, I have no idea what you're talking about. It's not intuitive. They're just figuring it out. You figured it out a long time ago, and that's why you're here and sitting and listening. Is this real to you or not? Well, Kryon, if it is, what do we do? And I would tell you right now, do things which are non-linear. Don't jump up and tell your neighbors to go write a book or attend multiple meetings. I want you to sit alone and connect. And maybe Spirit will say this to you. All you have to do is increase your light where you stand at work, at home, going from A to B, and spread the light on the planet because you're you. And that's enough. And that's nonlinear. It's not about doing, it's about being. And it's time for you to understand. I'll be back with more, much more. And so it is. Greetings again, dear ones. For the last few channels, we have been talking to you about something that is consciousness but physics, and it has to do with the multidimensionality of you, your cellular structure, your consciousness, and how you're moving paradigms from one reality to another. And so we want to enhance that yet today. Again, the channel is not about physics. It's about consciousness. It's about you. It's about what's coming. Now, yet again, I want to ask you to readjust your reality in the room. This is a message from Spirit. It's a benevolent message, a beautiful one, to the creative source that loves you. The creative source has a higher consciousness, you might say, than anything that you can even fathom. There is no room for darkness. Love is the king of emotions for you. It is also the benevolence of God. There is no other energy that surpasses it. It is prevalent throughout physics, throughout the universe. There'll come a day when science will expect benevolent return from experiments. That intuition will show them something to do, and there'll be no question of what the experiment's results will be. They'll feel the benevolence before they even experiment. That the scientific method will be something that qualifies something that they already know, not that they suspect. It's all part of what's coming. We gave you channels in the past, especially the last 3, that were interrupted by a translator. And so we wish to repeat some of it so that there is no interruption and in a language and word frame that is more consistent without translation. I want to talk about one of your famous scientists. Once again, it's Einstein. Einstein actually quarreled with quantum physicists in later years. Einstein did not believe in potentials. Einstein was more empirical. And yet, I am telling you that this man was the first quantum physicist. And we do this by saying what he did was to show you that something you thought was absolutely steady and empirical and would not be changeable was changeable. So in physics, especially that which you walk around in and call reality, there are certain things that behave certain ways, and they're not changeable. They can't be. It wouldn't be your reality if they changed. And Einstein came along and showed you one of the most stable things that you believe planetarily was changeable. When Einstein showed his theory of relativity, it was about time. It was about something so empirical, so steady for you, that you can measure time by the nanosecond. You've worked out ways of cutting time so that it is so precise, you know by the absolute piece of it what time it is. Because it never changes. But it did. Einstein presented something that I'm going to turn right around and show you is yours. He postulated that if a man got in a spaceship and went the speed of light, and he stayed out for perhaps a year, going the speed of light, and returned to the planet, he would be a year older, and the planet would have aged more than he did. So by going very fast, he slowed down his time relative to where he came from. Now, he didn't know that, and neither did Earth, until they met together, and then it was obvious. This rewrote the whole idea that something you thought was never going to change was variable. Now, I want you to just stop right there. That's quantum physics. Because it's going to rewrite what you think cannot be changed. Let's get back to the speed relationship to time. In 3 dimensions, in the thinking process that you have, even in 4 dimensions, you linearize everything. It has to be that way for you. It has to make sense for a human being. So speed to you is defined as the amount of duration between points. If you're driving a fast car, the duration will be shorter from A to B. An airplane, shorter from A to B. You go faster, the duration is shorter. And every time you mention speed, it's in a straight line. Now let me give you some what I call sideways logic. Could you go as fast in a circle? The answer is yes. Ignore that which you think is centrifugal force, which is not defined right. If you were to go in a circle instead of a straight line, could you still go fast? Of course. So now let's go very fast in a circle instead of a straight line. You have that picture in your mind. Now let's start to reduce the circle. And reduce and reduce and reduce and reduce and reduce until the circle is your cellular structure. You've heard the term vibrating at a higher level. A vibration to you is an oscillation, a back and forth motion. It's not, it's a circle. You are vibrating in a circle, and in this energy becoming multidimensional, your cellular structure is speeding up. Are you starting to get a picture? What would happen if your cellular structure started to speed up a lot more than someone else's? Using the theory of relativity in its purest form, ignoring some of the speed limits that Einstein has put there, can you see it would be possible for your clock to slow down and everyone around you is going faster? This results in a much longer lifespan, dear one. I just gave you the quantum reason why a high vibrating soul will live longer. It's because you change time with your consciousness. Now, I've done this so that you can relate to what you already know. So it's not some high idea in metaphysics that has no grounding to it. Einstein showed it to you. But you're doing it at a cellular level. I'm going to give you a piece of information that I've never revealed before that is going to be on the planet and known shortly. Inventors are starting to move into a multi-dimensional reality. Even if they don't know it, they're starting to use some principles that are multidimensional. Now, let me give you a paradigm that you are used to. And that is this: everything that works, that is mechanical, has to have a power supply. It really boils down to fire. There has to be fire. Heat is often needed, whether it's in steam or another way, in order to propel something. Fire equals light. Fire equals computing. Fire equals this, that. It all boils down to the elements of the planet fueling something you have created. Now, you'll get really good at efficient use of fire. That is a metaphor. But it still has to have a power supply. So the paradigm that I'm giving you is that in 3D, in order to have something that would appear to be energy, you have to have that which starts it somehow, a little or a lot. That is the paradigm of 3 dimensions. It has to come from something that is in front of you in order to develop it into something else. And you're getting, as I say, very good. What about quantum energy? Quantum energy is not linear. Now, if I told you it didn't need a power supply, I would be wrong. But let me tell you this: it does not need a 3-dimensional power supply. Here is an axiom that the quantum physicists and inventors will know. In order to have quantum energy, to work with it, to develop it, to use it, there has to be a quantum source. Period. You cannot create quantum energy or build anything using it without a source that is similar of quantumness. Let me define the word quantum. As we use it today, it means multi-dimensional. It is not the standard definition of quantum as physics would have. We are using it differently. It means multidimensional. Multidimensional energy of any form that is developed on this planet must have a multidimensional source. They're even going to call it a push-pull energy, because when they realize the dynamics of multidimensionality, it's going to work in a push-pull way. In linearity, one power supply simply pushes in one direction to fuel something that then does something. There's no push-pull. The closest push-pull energy you have was developed through a quantum mind called alternating current. And that is push-pull. If there's an engineer in the room, you'll chuckle because you know I'm right. You look at the phase relationships of alternating current, and it's push-pull. Tesla knew about this, and it wasn't time. A quantum energy needs a quantum source. Now, before we go to the next step, where would you get a quantum energy? Do you know there are quantum biologists? If there are quantum biologists, that tells you something about your biology. What if it were quantum? There are quantum sources all over the planet. Some of the biggest, the absolute largest energies on this planet sit there and look at you and work 24/7, and they're quantum. Gravity is quantum. Magnetics is quantum. Light is quantum. The sources of quantum energy and development are with those three. Plus one, you. If you have a quantum biology, that means that you can do quantum things. The source is inside your DNA. Now, this is what has created the ability for you to vibrate faster with consciousness. Do you know that if you vibrate fast enough and your consciousness is high enough and you can integrate with the creative source, what happens? Your DNA starts to work at a very efficient level. You go past 44, 55, you get into 80s and 90s. And this now will explain something very controversial. The masters of this planet had vibrating DNA in the 90s, and they controlled physics. They could change one thing into another. They could work with life force. They could make massless objects. And they can do it because they are one with that which is around them, with a fast, high vibrating DNA. The quantum engine is already there inside you, and this explains why this new energy and the magnetic field is able to allow you to go further than you've ever gone before. A quantum engine, which is your biology, will create quantum thought, higher thinking inventions, because you think out of 3D. Many of you will outlive your families. There'll come a time when humanity looks at the few who are outliving the many. And you will again face the objection that you're using magic, not understanding that what you're using is the love of God. It's always been there. This is just one of many things that we'd love to share more with you. But if I wanted to summarize this portion of the message, it would be this. Everything that you wish to accomplish personally within you can be done using a quantum engine that is already in place and waiting to be started. The consciousness of thought, the emotions of love, benevolence, and compassion are catalysts for the quantum engine. Would you like me to say that again? The attributes of love, compassion, and benevolence are the catalysts for the quantum engine. That's what starts it. Fear will stop it. It creates a higher vibrating human being. Just like Einstein says, you surpass some of the attributes of physics as you know them when you start to vibrate higher. Did you know that disease is a lower vibration? Did you know that if your cellular structure vibrates higher, a lower vibrating disease cannot remain? Am I getting through? It's physics. It's the physics of consciousness. Interesting, isn't it, that of all the inventions that you're going to have in these next decades, of the quantum things that are going to occur, the one that you will use first is within you. Because you have to kickstart that one in order to have the others. Because these are going to come out of high consciousness thinking. And that is going to create engrams and patterns of thought that are going to connect to a universal source that gives you perfect physics, not limited physics as you live in. The inventions are in you, waiting to be connected to the source that created them. I want to give you something to think about. I want to paint a picture of a quantum source that is all over this planet. Einstein showed you you could change time. It was basic. It's been proven. I'm going to tell you something. In real physics, not limited physics, not 3D physics, in real physics, are you ready? Everything can be changed. It's a complete, beautiful, variable system that you can change. When you learn about what it is and how to use it, and you develop the inventions and the machinery, if we can use that word, you will also have some other revelations. Machinery could be partly biological. I'm going to leave that alone. But here's what I want to tell you. What do physicists tell you about matter? They tell you it's mostly space. It's empty. I have two examples I want to give you that are outside of the box of your limited physics. Here you have a rock, and the rock weighs a certain amount. It always weighs that. Of course it does. You can't change that. The rock is the rock. What if I told you you could change that? If you go inside a rock at the atomic level, it's mostly space. That means there's plenty of room to change the density that makes the rock weigh what it does. Dear ones, why does gold and lead, for a certain size, weigh more than basalt or some other light rock or a sponge? And the answer is density. So if you can molecularly, atomically change the density of the rock, you can change what it weighs. Now, if the rock is mostly space, you've got plenty of room, if you knew how to do it. By the way, Tesla did. Tesla is back, by the way. This will occur to humanity When quantum energies are used, you can change quantum rules. If you change the density of the rock, you could make it massless. You could make it float. That's all you have to do. Dear ones, it's simply variable physics that in your box you don't think you can change. You didn't think you could change time either, did you? And that was in the 40s. It's going to happen. Imagine for a moment if you could change the weight of things, and you could do it easily through a quantum source, not a big power supply, forget that. And what source might you use to change the density of matter? Turn the page. You're sitting there and you have something I want you to do figuratively in this example. I want you to pretend for a moment that you're in front of a very powerful magnet. It's actually not a magnet, it's a pair, plus and minus. It's one of those special magnets that it's so difficult to pry it apart, because the plus and the minus are aligned, so they're sticking together. It's not very big either. In fact, it's not even 2 inches. It's small. There's no power supply. It's simply two magnets that are known to be extremely strong. They're dense. They have properties of magnetism highest on the planet ever discovered, and they're sticking together. They're small. Your job is to pull them apart. So you begin. You grasp them and you stop for a moment, realizing they're not going to come apart easily. So you take a stance of a weightlifter. You bend down. You get your muscles prepared. You grab each part and you start to pull. And it's tough. It's not coming apart. They're stuck together through a magnetism that is so strong. You know, if you slide them slightly to one way or another, they might come apart. You have to be careful. If they come apart and you get your finger in between, you'll squash it. And you start to sweat. Now you're extending energy. You're expending energy. You're extending your consciousness to everything you can to pull these parts from one another. Now I want you to freeze frame that for a moment. I want you to get that picture firmly in your mind. You're doing everything you can. You're breathing hard. You're huffing and puffing. You're sweating. The magnet will eventually come apart with the force that you're using as a human being. But I want you to freeze frame it. Because this, my friend, is the difference between 3D energy and quantum. The human being is a machine that's 3D. In this particular example, trying everything it can through force to pull something apart. If you do it long enough, you'll get tired. If you do it long enough, you're going to need fuel. You're going to need to eat something in order to sustain your life, so you can use your muscles, so you can continue to pull apart this magnet. If it were life and death, that you had to pull it apart to survive, you'd also add anxiety. Then you'd have to eat more. Now let's turn over and look at what the magnet is doing. Nothing. What kind of force is 24/7? The magnet has incredible power. So much so you're sweating to try to pull it apart. And it's doing nothing. It's just sitting there. long after you're tired, it's still powerful. Dear ones, long after you're dead, it's still there. It's still powerful. Never ending. It doesn't need to be fed. It's forever. How can you explain that? What kind of a power is there? There's no power supply. There's no electricity. Only magnetism. I just gave you the key for massless objects. It's going to come from a quantum source. The quantum source will be magnetism. Magnets get their power from a quantum source that does not appear to be on the planet. It's everywhere. It's part of the ethers of the heliosphere of the sun. It is part of the ever-present ethos of the space between atomic structure. Magnetism and the power of it comes from a source that you cannot explain because it's not linear. How many physicists have looked at the power of magnets and scratched their head? You know how to use them, you have no idea where the source is coming from. And you huff and you puff, and you use all of that 3D energy that has to be fueled in order to pull them apart or push them, and they're forever. And they don't care, and they don't get tired. Welcome to the future. There is so much energy available without a 3D power supply. And this will be the new frontier. When you can do these kinds of things and not weaponize them, that's high consciousness. It's coming. It's enough for today to give you examples of what high consciousness can do, where you're headed for, because there is a connection to the creative source which is going to open up and give you the benevolence that you deserve. These things will not be given completely while the earth is in its current state of unbalance. These things will clear, and the unbalance will become less, and you will feel it, and you will know it, and there'll come a day when there's very, very little killing on this planet, and much more understanding on this planet. And when you can see that, it will simply open the frontiers of physics. And like the magnet that is forever, it will create for you food and water and power and even youthing. That's enough. You're in the forerunners of all of it, all of it. Planet after planet has been through this. It's coming. And you will say, Kryon, was it going to be in my lifetime? And I'm going to tell you, of course. Of course. You may look a little different, but you'll be alive. You're going to be here to see it, all of it. That's because you're an old soul. You paid the price to get here, with lifetime after lifetime of working with light, dear ones. Now it's time the light gives it back to you. And so it is.